Hello, everybody. It's Reed and Danny back with another episode of the All Grit podcast. This is All Grit episode number 3. Danny, say what's up to the people.
What's up, guys?
We got a really, really fun idea inbound today. I say really fun. It's not that creative. I think it's a really fun idea. Me and Danny have been waiting to do this. It was inspired by a Instagram post we saw on Lions Zone on Instagram. Go follow them. They're always pretty up to date with the Lions news as well. Um, yeah, it's basically just a Lions free agency class. We're gonna go through tiers here. Just basically a walker sign. You know what I mean? Would you let him walk? Would you sign him? We'll kind of preface the difference between saying we'd sign a guy for like a year or two or sign a guy for like a giant contract. But let's just jump right into it. The Lions 2025 free agent class, I should say, is headlined by Carlton Davis. So Danny, you start. You tell me sign or walk.
Oh man, Carlton Davis, the GOAT. He is the man. He is the backbone of our defense. I really like the guy. Um, Obviously we spent a third round pick on him just to get him on the squad last year. So you would think if we spent a third rounder on him, it would be more than just a 1 year rental. Um, However, with all the contracts, I mean, I know I sound like a broken record at this point. We're already on episode, but with all the contracts that we have in due, and this is like saying we aren't making any huge free agency moves, which we might as well could be with Mr. Garrett, but that's besides the point. Carlton Davis is going to cost us anywhere between probably like 15 to 19 mil a year. Would you agree with those numbers?
Miles, yeah, he'd probably be upwards of the north of
Oh
that.
no, I'm at Carlton. I'm at Carlton.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Carlton Davis, the market for corners is kind of inflated right now. There's gonna be some guys that get paid here soon that kind of reset the market, even with like Pat Surtain, a couple of them kind of guys. Unless he's been paid, to my knowledge, he hasn't. Um,
I,
yeah, Carlton Davis probably gonna cost you north of like 17 a year, I'd assume.
yeah, that is quite a commitment. I do think that we need somebody, some sort of veteran leadership, especially with Terry on Arnold. He was kind of thrown. He was literally thrown in the deep last year. He was Daniel in the Lions den. With having absolutely no pass rush, any corner is going to look bad with no pass rush. And then with all your guys falling around beside you, nobody's going to look good, especially a rookie. And we got two of them. We got Rakestraw as well, and so we definitely need somebody in the room. However, I don't know if I'm willing to pay this money. If they do end up signing them, that's great. But I think I'm leaning more towards letting them walk or franchise tagging them. But yeah, I don't know if we can get them for 4 years. It would have to be a shorter contract.
Danny, I'm going to jump in real quick. I am looking at the top corner salaries in the league right now. Jalen Ramsey is the highest paid corner at just north of 24 million a year. Patrick Surtain has been paid. He is also making about 24 a year. Looking at some of these guys here, I think he falls into the range of like right now he's currently making just south of 15. He's making 14.8 a year with the Lions currently. So he already ranks as like a top 12-ish corner in terms of salary. So I would assume if he is getting paid, it'll be. I'm looking at some other guys here. Jalen Johnson's making 19. L'Jarius Sneed's making 19.1. Tyson Campbell 19.1. Marshawn Lattimore 19.4. I think he will probably, if he was to re-sign, I think on the open market he brings north of 20. I think if he was to stay with Detroit, you'd have to hope he kind of honors, like, you gave up a third round pick for me, maybe a little bit of a discount. That would look like probably a $18 to $20 million cap hit, though, man. I think that's the realistic number for him.
Yeah, man. I again, if I guess a shorter deal,
Yeah,
we
he
might
is
be able to
29, so
do
he
it.
might be more likely to sign something a little less long term here.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I would again. I'm kind of on the shorter side, but what do you think, Reed?
I think that in terms of like importance to re-sign, he's an important player. I think he's the most important player of this entire free agency class. I would probably lean towards signing him just off of this. I think that he's 29. He's got realistically probably 2 more good years of football left in him. He's shown he's injury prone. I'd like to think that you can probably get him for just under 20 to 21 a year. You'd pay him for a year or two. I would say you probably give him like a 2-year contract worth about 45 to 50, guarantee about 40. And by the time his contract runs out and that cap hits off the books, then you're fully into like guys like Aiden Hutchinson getting paid hypothetically. Salary cap's a joke in the NFL. I think you could totally find a way to make it work. Um, I think it's a guy you probably really need to look at resigning. I would say he's on the sign side of things for sure.
Okay, so yeah, we're kind of on the same page there. Then we will we'll drop down next to Kevin Zeitler. What do you think about Kevin Zeitler?
I would say I would say sign too. I think Zeitler is again a very short term investment. Our window to win, I really do believe it's like next year. I think next year is your year to go out and win. And that's why we've been pressing the issue of a guy like Miles Garrett, right? We think the window is next year. So I'd say Carlton Davis and Kevin Zeitler represent win now moves. I'd say that's short term, maybe have money short term. Long term is where it becomes an issue. Signing both of those guys really doesn't long term hurt your books at all. So I would say getting back Kevin Zeitler on a 1-year type contract would be pretty important. I mean, I do think Christian Mahogany can plug and play next year, but I still think Zeitler keeping that veteran leadership around the offensive line and keeping that guy in to be pretty legit. I honestly do see a reason. I can see a scenario honestly where he retires this year. He's been dinged up a lot, but yeah, I'd put him on the sign side of things too.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I can't argue with that. I personally was leaning towards him walking, get just given that he's old, um, and just the season that Christian Mahogany had, I thought that if his number was called, he'd be able to do what he needed to do. It is evident though that our line is better when Kevin Zeitler's out. Able to get him for another year. I think this year what we ended up paying him like 6 million or something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
I want to say it's like 7, but yeah, it was like a
uh,
1-year cheap
if,
contract. It was a very cheap
if,
contract this year.
right, if we were able to get him for that kind of money for one more year, if he stays healthy, I think it would very much be worth it in the long run. I mean, especially just being able to, yeah, aid in the pass game, man. I mean, pass protection. We definitely need to hold up for Goff. So I would not be mad at that at all. I would be okay with re-signing him.
All right, so we'll say first 2 guys are signs. Let's move down. This is where it gets, so I feel like those first 2 guys, you can lean either way. I could see arguments for either one, right? But I think for the most part, Lions fans agree those 2 guys were very important to our team's success last year. And when they weren't in the lineup, you could tell. You know what I mean? These next like really big group of guys, there's a lot of people who probably have very different opinions. I'm interested to see what you guys think in the comments. Let us know in the comments down below what you think of some of these as well. Love to hear different opinions here. We're gonna drop down to Iffy Melifonwu. Danny, you and I might slightly disagree on this. I think we should let him walk. I think, and I know he came back a little rusty, missed a lot of time. He came back. He really only had one good season, which would have been his third year, 2023. He had a good year. I loved Iffy Melifonwu that year. He came off the edge a little bit in blitzes. He had some nice plays, forcing some turnovers. He was a very sure tackler in the run game. And I didn't really see any of that this year watching him play. I thought he was kind of a liability in coverage. And even in the box playing the run, I thought he was a little bit of a liability. You didn't see nearly as of explosive plays, didn't really force the turnovers. I get it. He didn't play as many games. He kind of was rusty. I get that argument. But in terms of what I think he will bring in the open market, I think there's a market for Iffy Melifonwu somewhere. And I think that me and Danny had this conversation earlier. One thing that will get you into absolute cap misery is if you pay good players like they're great players. Iffy Melifonwu is a good NFL player. He will contribute on special teams. He will be a very good rotational player in your defense. He definitely had an important role in the year we went to the NFC Championship game. No one's discounting that. But what I can tell you is Ife Melifonwu is going to demand money that we just cannot afford to pay a third safety.
I yeah, yeah. I I do, man, I can't say to let Iffy walk. I love Iffy. Let's just start out like that. If you're saying not last season, but the season prior, he looked really good out there, man. He had a lot of playing time since CJ Gardner Johnson went down, and he did what he needed to do, man. He uh he was really good in the box. He was really good coming off the edge, getting sacks and whatnot. And like you said, man, this year he came back for the Minnesota game, and there wasn't any difference on the field. I mean, he didn't really add anything, and it is really concerning because he had games to contribute after his injury, and you just didn't really see that. I mean, it just wasn't the same old Effie. And I agree, if he does stay, he probably would get a chunk of change, and that's not really a chunk of change that I'm willing to discuss. So although I am an Iffy fan, I will lean with you that we should probably let him walk.
I agreed. I think that's a very good point. So we'll move on to Derek Barnes here. Derek Barnes, um, I gotta say I'm a huge, I mean, kind of like you said, Iffy. I'm a huge Derek Barnes fan. He's like him and Iffy both part of that first draft. You'll see that common theme here. A lot of guys who are part of that first draft class that Brad Holmes brought in, all guys that played roles in making this team a lot better. And as a Lions fan, you have a special place in your heart for these players, but it doesn't change the fact that money's going to be tight. Derek Barnes is a great player. I think he did not get enough love for what he did for our defense. When he got hurt against Arizona, it's pretty devastated because he was going to have, I think he was on pace to have a really good year. And not that he would replace anywhere near what Hutch's production was. I think he was on his way to having a career year. And even when Hutch went down, I think him and Zadarius Smith is a way better combo than Zadarius Smith than whoever else we had playing. But that being said, though, Derek Barnes, I've seen rumors he's heavily interested in going to the Jets, go reunite with Aaron Glenn. I could totally see that in a heartbeat. That being said, Kelvin Shepard's our DC. He was a linebackers coach, so you never know. There might be some sort of loyalty there, but I doubt it. I really think Derek Barnes is going to go make a bag in free agency. Kind of comes down to something as iffy. You can't pay them good players like they're great. Derek Barnes is a good player, a really good player, but he's not great. And you really just have to trust that Brad Holmes can find free agency value to replace these guys, or draft picks to replace these guys, right? So I would say let him walk.
Yeah, I would agree. Um, I I think that Derek Barnes, like you were saying, he had a lot of promise coming this year, and it really sucked that his season was taken away from him. I mean, you could see that Aaron Glenn was using him more as a pass rusher, putting him on the line, and he's actually doing really good. And that's something that we didn't necessarily see before. I mean, obviously, yeah, we've seen him on the line, but he wasn't having as much success as he was this season. Um, at the same time as a smaller sample size. So it's hard to say like whether he would have kept it up the whole season or whatnot. Um, but you are running into the same idea where you can't be paying these guys, especially when you got a Super Bowl to win, man. These guys, sure, they add a lot to the team, but they do not make like the ultimate difference. And so I would probably unless you were able to get a little solid in there and cut Derek Barnes for cheap, I would probably lean towards letting him walk.
Agreed. Moving on to Tim Patrick here. I love Tim Patrick. I really do. I think he is a guy you have to try and resign. I don't think his market value is anything insane. I mean, he hasn't played in 2 years because of injuries. This year, he stayed healthy all year, and he was a great third option for us. Really, I mean, I guess fourth option, probably counting him behind Laporta, but he had a really solid year for us, man. I mean, you could definitely tell him and Goff built quite the connection by the end of the season. It had some just nice plays. He's a very nice player. I think that you can keep him at a minimum here. I think you can keep him at a pretty cheap contract. And for some reason, if he has a market with some teams like that are willing to pay him a lot of money, which I don't think they will, Yeah, let him walk. But I would say he's a pretty realistic guy to keep on the roster at a pretty friendly contract.
I I'm really glad to hear you say that, Reed. I was worried that you were gonna maybe lean towards letting him walk. I think Tim Patrick is a very underrated player on our offense. Sure, he probably didn't have the stats to back up that claim, but man, he came through big in a lot of moments. Had he just had like two or three catches a game where like, yeah, sure, two, three catches, whatever, but like these are big plays, man. He's a playmaker. He's just a force to be reckoned with out in the field. Big target. Um, and I like him on the team, and I really hope that he stays in the off season. It's really nice, even just as a player perspective, whether he's on the Lions or not, just to see him out on the field again is amazing, and to see him move as well as he did. Obviously, he's not the same player that he was, but just to be able to see him out on the field was amazing. Um, this is his first healthy offseason in 3 years or something like that. Truly amazing. I really hope that he can stay. I think even if we like target receiver in the draft or something like that, he would be a great mentor to these guys. And I wholeheartedly agree that we should re-sign Tim Patrick. Next on the list, Marcus Davenport. Nothing great to be said about this guy. I really hope that we drop him, but I will let Reed put his 2 cents in there.
Yeah, no, we're gonna keep these next few short here because there's not a lot of guys besides really Levon Zarique that have played a pile of games for us. Marcus Davenport, I mean, his whole scouting grade coming out of college was super freak, but he's just hurt, so hasn't really lived up to the hype in the NFL in this time in New Orleans, Minnesota, and now with Detroit, dealing with so many injuries. You know, it sucks. Yeah, I thought he had a pretty good week 1 and week 2, but your best ability is availability in the NFL, and he's never available. So yeah, I'm with Danny. I mean, if for some reason you can keep him like a 1 year like $4 million contract, but it's not realistic. Someone's gonna fall in love with his traits and pay him. I get like just like we did, right? I mean, we paid him like what is like 1 year, 12 million, something like that. So yeah, I'd say let him walk. He didn't really contribute a pile to the team this year, and we don't really need him. So
Right, right. Yeah, he very much had like an Aaron Rodgers season. Like he just, I don't know. You'd hate to see it. I hope that he can find a team that he can play for more than 2 games. But at this point in the season, we can't be paying players to just chance on someone who's super, super, super duper injury prone. So
yeah, agreed. Kind of with that same token, Levon Zarique. Loved Levi coming out of college. Was super excited for him. Um, really until this year, played no role on that defense at all. I mean, just always hurt. Missed like a full season with a back injury. I mean, I just don't think you bet that he's healthy moving forward. I mean, he played a full season this year. I get it. But what are the odds that happens again? He dealt with injuries in college and now having back issues in the NFL, not an ideal circumstance. And I really think, based off his film from this year, there will be a market for him. So I would let him go test it. I'd let him go.
I would agree, man. Levi, it was really nice to see him out on the field finally this year. And I thought he he was good. Obviously, he did what he needed to do. He was there when guys were hurt, and I think he would have been a really good depth piece if we would have had him all 4 years. But he's replaceable. I think Wingo could definitely be a guy that could replace him.
100%.
I think we got the pieces in place, and it's just time to move on.
Yeah, I'm with you, Danny. I also think that they're going to look defensive line heavy in this draft. So I think guys like Makai Wingo, and then if you draft like a legit D tackle in the second, third round, I mean, I think he's replaceable at this point. Which sucks because based off what you saw this year from him, and really was his true first healthy season, I think his trajectory would have been pretty significantly different had he played all 4 years rather than just playing one, basically. But it's the way it is. You got to move on. So next up here is Teddy Bridgewater. I'm gonna keep this one short. I was not a fan of bringing him back. Don't want to bring him back after that. I hope he retires. I hope nothing but the best. I like Teddy Bridgewater, but man, I just don't want to see him back in our team next year.
I I do like Teddy Bridgewater, and I definitely feel more comfortable with Teddy Bridgewater. under center than Hendon Hooker at this point in time. But I mean, he just it's like your ex girlfriend, bro. He keeps coming back. Like I mean, at some point you just gotta cut ties. I think mutually it'd be in our best interest to kind of go our separate ways. I agree. I feel like if we still don't trust Hendon Hooker at this point, there'd be somebody in free agency that we could get beyond Teddy Bridgewater. And I think that could be something that we could potentially look into this offseason. We've gotten pretty fortunate with Goff staying healthy. But even just seeing it in the divisional round, him getting roughed up and having to go out for luckily just one drive. But it could be definitely something that Brad Holmes could be thinking about this offseason of finding a decent replacement at QB2.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on here, Dan Skipper. Skipper, man, he's I don't see any reason why they shouldn't bring him back. I know he's a little bit on the older side. He's a swing tackle. I don't think it costs you Paul to bring him back, and he is just such an underrated player on this team, man. Plays swing tackle, but also is plugged in at guard and tackle and pitches. I mean, I just think for what his value is, I think he's a guy that knows your system. I don't know why you wouldn't bring him back. He's kind of a fan favorite now since the Dallas games. I mean, I don't know. I'd bring him back if you can make it work financially for sure.
100%, man. I would love to have Skipper back. You could just see it in games. I mean, his number was called. Um, Taylor Decker missed quite a few games this season, and I'm not saying he's Taylor Decker or anything like that, but I do think that he was solid enough to do what he needed to do in those games to for the time that was needed. And it's not like Skipper's breaking the bank. I think if you can get a deal done, that would be amazing. Just get him around for another year or two, and yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yep, agreed. Allen Robinson here is the next one. We keep this one short because he didn't really play much. But not resign him. He's the ghost of himself. Let him walk.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I do think that we need more depth. I do not think that Allen Robinson is the answer to that depth issue. If we would have had Allen Robinson about six or 8 years ago,
Whole different
that
story.
was yeah, different story. But at this point, I think we should go our separate ways.
Agreed. Agreed. Here's one that I would say we should resign. Al Muqaddin Muhammad. I'm sorry if I butchered his name. But that man, I really liked. I know he's older. Kind of a cool story though. One of those free agents that Brad Holmes signed right when Hutch got hurt to kind of hopefully fill a void at the defensive end spot. And not that he was some game wrecker, right? I mean, like I get that. But man, just talk about a guy that does everything right. Had kind of a cool long arm move, had showed some swipe. I mean, they just had a decent pass rush for a guy just off the street and set a really good edge against the run. I think he is a guy kind of like John Kaminsky's been for us for a while here. Just a guy that I mean is just a really solid depth player. I would totally bring him back. I don't think his value would be anything insane at all.
I agree. I would love to have Muhammad back on the team. I feel like, especially with the depth issues that we did have, if he would have been switching in a rotational player behind some of our starters like Hutch, and even like Za'Darius once we get Hutch back, I feel like he would definitely benefit, and we would benefit from having him on the line. So, I would lean towards keeping him.
Yep. In the same token, we got John Kaminsky up here next. I don't think his market value is anything insane. He missed the whole season with a knee injury. I you know I would personally lean towards re-signing him just because you're already letting guys like Levi and Marcus Davenport walk. I think he's a very short term depth player, but like I mean, also there's needs for those kind of guys. So I would say if you can keep him and Muhammad, that'd be pretty ideal.
I would agree. I think Kaminsky, if you were going to re-sign him, he'd be more like a one deal thing. See how he's doing after the injury. I Kaminsky is a valuable player, and we definitely missed out from having him go out in the preseason. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't mind re-signing him. I also get if we let him walk just because of the injury, but hope to re-sign him.
Yep. Another defense lineman coming up. We got Pat O'Connor. Besides Thanksgiving Day, this guy really didn't do a whole lot for me. I honestly would not. I don't think we need to resign him at all. I think letting him walk would be probably in our best interest.
Yeah, Pat O'Connor. That I honestly I didn't really recognize him until the Packers game, which he had a great game against the Packers, but other than that, dude, I mean, he was I no disrespect to Pat O'Connor, huge dude, way bigger than me. But when I think of some of these guys that were working their 9 to 5 at Walmart, I do kind of Connor here, and I don't think he's a guy that we need on our roster next year.
Yeah, agreed. Pulverizing one coming up here for Lions fans. Kindle Vildor. I'm probably going to get roasted in the comments saying I don't know ball with this one, but I would say resign him. I mean, he's going to be a guy where it's kind of like last year. Where it's like no one resigned him. But you got him for like a 1 year contract. You can get him for cheap. He knows your system. And call him what you will. All jokes aside, you're not supposed to see him play much. He's supposed to spell guys in a rotation and, be primarily a special teamer, which he does pretty well. Can support the run, just, not ideal in man coverage. And sadly, our defense is a lot of bump and run man coverage. You see me exposed a lot there. But I mean, really, against the Commanders, he didn't play all that awful. He just, he's in the best world. You never see him play. He's just a guy that's there for insurance.
100%, man. I I it pains me to say this, but I do agree that we probably should re-sign Vildor. It really obviously watching the NFC Championship game, no one in their right mind would say re-sign Vildor. Everyone would say like, I never want to see this guy again. Um, but at the end of the day, you're right. He knows our system. It's not like any team's begging to have Vildor on their team. I mean, let's be honest. But he fulfills a need in our run defense. I mean, there's a reason why he's out on the field. He's really good at run defense. Um, and again, it's kind of like what I was talking about with Terrion Arnold. When you put corners out there and the quarterback has 5, 6, 7 seconds, any corner's going to look trash. And I'm not saying Vildor would be automatic lock up, strap up if we were getting to the quarterback sooner than that. But he would definitely look better out there. He looked a lot more competent than he was. That's just the truth. I mean, in the past 2 years, we haven't really had that great of a pass rush. I mean, we've been begging for another edge rusher to complement Hutch, and well, we might have that in Za'Darius. We might also have that in Myles Garrett. Brad Holmes picks up the phone. But I feel like Vildor definitely could be a great depth piece to at least set the bar for some of these future corners. So yeah, hopefully, I mean, the idea is you have somebody like Vildor, and you'll have the people under him that will hopefully take his spot, and you'll never see Vildor out on the field again unless it's special teams. But we got to get to that spot first. Ultimately, I agree with you. We should re-sign Vildor.
Yep. And these last few guys, they're not really anything super meaningful to mention, so we're gonna keep it quick. But we got Emmanuel Mosley up here. I feel bad for him, but yeah, it's kind of like a Marcus Davenport thing. Hasn't been healthy, and I mean, even when he was healthy, he wasn't playing over guys like Khalil Dorsey or Kendall Vildor. I don't think it's worth resigning him.
Yeah, Emmanuel Mosley is like picking Kyle Pitts in fantasy, man. At this point, I will not be a sucker to re-sign him, and I hope Brad Holmes gives it up, man. I get it. We spent a lot of money on him, and I was really hoping that he'd be healthy, but at this point, I believe it'd be in our best interest to cut ties.
Yep. The next up, we do have Khalil Dorsey, kind of speaking the devil here. Khalil Dorsey has some corner safety flexibility. I think another kind of like Kendall Vildor, just cheap depth. A guy who knows your system. I think definitely worth keeping around. I know he had a big injury at this, at the end of the year, so it'd be kind of worth keeping on the medical. But if they deem him ready to go for next year, I would totally take a shot and keep him around.
100% agree. It definitely pays dividends on special teams. And like you said, great depth guy. I really hope that they do re-sign him as long as he's medically okay.
Yep. And then our last unrestricted free agent is Michael Badgley, which enough said. We don't need him. We have our kicker. We'll jump right into these are the restricted / exclusive free agents. So restricted free agent of Craig Reynolds and Shane Zylstra. I'll just kind of knock both these out back to back. I think it's worth keeping both of them. Unrestricted free agents for those who aren't like aware of what it means. I mean, restricted free agents, I should say, not unrestricted. Every free agent we talked about before is unrestricted, which means they hit the open market. Anyone can lay claim to them with a contract, right? Anyone can sign them. These restricted free agents, a team can make an offer. They'll hit free agency. Say the Packers want Craig Reynolds, they offer him 2 years, $3 million, right? The Lions have the rights to Craig Reynolds, so they can say, all right, we'll match that. If you match the contract, you keep him. So I honestly don't think they'll even get that far. I think they'll keep both of these guys. Talk about just cheap depth, both reliable guys who've been around the team for a while. But just so people know, that's what we say. We say restricted versus unrestricted free agent. So I'd say keep both of them. I think they'll both be pretty affordable.
100%. Yeah, I agree. I really like Craig Reynolds and Shane Zylstra. I did suck that obviously Shane Zylstra went down. We didn't get to see him this year. But he is a great depth tight end. And I mean, 3 years ago he was putting in work. So I love to see him back. And obviously Craig Reynolds, really good special teamers. Uh, RB3. I thought he did pretty good this season, and I'd love to have him back.
And then last but not least, we have Trevor Nowaski. He if you guys aren't familiar, he played some edge linebacker hybrid type play. He honestly kind of filled Derek Barnes' role to an extent. He's from Saginaw Valley State, Division II player. Love the GLIAC, so definitely rooting for him. I mean, it kind of falls into a lot of these guys we talk about just cheap depth. He's young. He has a pile of upside. Very athletic. Showed a lot of promise, really. I mean, he took his lumps, but he definitely wasn't bad by any means. So I would love to see them keep him around as just cheap depth for sure.
Yeah, I thought he held his own this year. Obviously, with where we were at, him being on the field wasn't ideal, and you'd hope that in the following years that you wouldn't really have to rely on Trevor Nowaski too much. But as a depth player, and as you said, at the price that we would probably get him at, I would be definitely okay with re-signing Trevor Nowaski.
Yeah, that's all of them, guys. So let us know down in the comments below what you would do if you're the Lions here. I know there's a lot of guys. We said to keep a lot of guys who were kind of lesser known. Just kind of to repreface, a lot of those guys would be very, very affordable. And, it's just realistic. NFL teams like keeping players around, familiar with the system, familiar with the team, guys who have been in the locker room. That's what most of those guys are. So I do think there's some guys you can kind of go either way on. So let us know down in the comments below what you guys would do. Appreciate the support so much the last couple of videos, guys. It's been great. Danny, anything to say to the people?
Guys, I really appreciate you tuning in, commenting, liking, viewing, just giving us your time. We really appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the content, and I'm excited to make more content in the future.
All right. That being said, guys, this was episode 3 of All Grit. God bless. Have a great rest of your day.